The cardboard box slipped from my sweat-slicked hands, crashing to the splintered hardwood floor of my Brooklyn walk-up, spilling a cascade of Polaroids that fluttered like dying leaves, each one a frozen stab of betrayal from the life I'd just torched. "Fuck you, Alex," I whispered to the empty air, my voice cracking like the frame of our last photo, where his arm draped possessively over my shoulder while his eyes already wandered to someone else. That's when the doorbell buzzed, sharp and insistent, pulling me from the wreckage like a lifeline I didn't deserve. I wiped my face on the hem of my threadbare Mets tee, the one Alex always mocked as your sad boy uniform, and shuffled to the door, half expecting the super to lecture me about the noise. Instead, there stood Henry, tall, broad-shouldered, with that effortless all-American grin that made his blue eyes crinkle like he'd just stepped off a football field in some Norman Rockwell painting. We'd met 6 months back at a dive bar in Williamsburg, bonding over cheap IPAs and gripes about freelance graphic design gigs that paid in exposure. "Heard you were bailing on this dump," he said, hefting a 6-pack of Yangling in one hand and a toolkit in the other. "Figured you'd need muscle more than therapy." His laugh was low and warm, cutting through the stale humidity of the hallway like a summer breeze off the East River. I forced a smile, stepping aside to let him in, but my chest tightened as he brushed past, close enough that I caught the faint cedar and citrus scent of his cologne, a reminder that some things in life still smelled like possibility. We started with the kitchen, him prying tape off boxes while I stacked plates wrapped in newspaper obituaries I'd swiped from the corner bodega. "So, what's the real story?" Henry asked, not looking up as he wedged a crowbar under a stubborn flap. "Alex finally pulled the plug. Or did you wise up first?" I hesitated, the truth lodged in my throat like a bad oyster. Alex hadn't just left. He'd shattered me. 2 weeks ago, I'd walked in on him tangled in our sheets with that barista from the coffee shop down the block, the one with the ironic mustache and a laugh like shattered glass. "It's not what it looks like, Cal," he'd stammered, but the condom wrapper on the nightstand said otherwise. I packed his shit that night, hurled it into the hall like confetti at a funeral, and spent the dawn hours scrolling Grindr for anonymous distractions that left me emptier than before. "Wise up," I muttered finally, shoving a box labeled Fragile Lies toward him. "Yeah, that." Henry paused, his hands stilling on the box, and for a heartbeat, the room felt smaller, the air thicker with unspoken weights. He was straight, or at least, that's what I'd always assumed. The kind of guy who high-fived after touchdowns and quoted Springsteen lyrics unironically, with a string of ex-girlfriends who'd probably framed their breakups as mutual growth. But there was something in the way he looked at me then, a flicker of empathy that bordered on hunger, like he'd mapped my scars before I even showed them. "Hey," he said softly, reaching out to squeeze my shoulder, his palm rough from weekend carpentry gigs, grounding me in a way Alex's manicured touches never had. "You're better off. Trust me, I've seen enough bad breakups to know when someone's dodging a bullet." We cracked open the Yanglings around noon, the cans hissing like relieved sighs as we slumped against the living room wall, surrounded by the detritus of my unraveling. The apartment was a third-floor railroad in Bed-Stuy, the kind where you could hear the A-train rumble through your dreams and the neighbors' arguments bled through the walls like bad graffiti. Sunlight slanted through the grimy blinds, gilding the dust motes that danced like indifferent ghosts. Henry told stories to fill the silence, about growing up in a sleepy suburb outside Philly, where Friday nights meant bonfires and stolen kisses under the bleachers, and how he'd fled to New York chasing a screenwriting dream that mostly involved slinging lattes at a Soho cafe. Wrote a spec about two guys on a road trip across Route 66, he said, swigging his beer. One's running from a divorce, the other's hiding from his own reflection. Sound familiar? I laughed. A real one this time, the kind that bubbled up unexpected and left my ribs aching. Steal my life, why don't you? But make the ending happier. No twist where the car breaks down in the Mojave and they end up as buzzard food. His eyes met mine over the rim of his can, holding just a second too long, and I felt it then, a spark, electric and forbidden, crackling in the space between us. Was it the grief talking? The isolation of single life in a city that chewed up hearts and spat out husks? Or something truer, buried deeper than I'd dared admit since college, when I'd buried my first crush under layers of denial and dorm room hookups. By late afternoon, we'd hauled half the load down to his beat-up Ford F-150, parked crookedly against a hydrant like it owned the block. Sweat plastered my shirt to my back, and Henry's tank top clung in ways that made my gaze linger, on the tattoo peeking from his collarbone. A compass rose inked in faded black, pointing nowhere but north. We paused on the stoop for a smoke, the autumn air crisp with the promise of falling leaves and shorter days. A group of kids on razor scooters zipped by, hollering in Spanglish, while across the street, an old Jamaican woman swept her stoop with rhythmic strokes, her headscarf a riot of crimson and gold. You ever think about starting over? Henry asked, exhaling a plume that curled toward the overcast sky. Like, really starting over, not just a new zip code, but a new you. The question hung there, heavy as the boxes we'd just muscled down 3 flights. I thought of Alex's ghost in every corner, the way he'd mocked my artsy-fartsy sketches, called my vulnerability drama queen shit. Starting over sounded like a fairy tale, one where princes didn't turn into frogs at the stroke of midnight. Every damn day, I admitted, flicking ash onto the cracked sidewalk. But what if the new me is just the old one with better lighting? Henry turned, his profile sharp against the fading light, and something shifted in his expression, vulnerability cracking through the easy charm. Then you find someone who sees you in the dark. His words landed soft, but they hit like a freight train, derailing every assumption I'd built around him. Before I could respond, he stubbed out his cigarette and stood, offering a hand that I took without thinking. His grip was firm, calloused fingers enveloping mine, and as we headed back inside, I wondered if this was the moment, the one where boxes became bridges, and help turned into something perilously close to hope. The rest of the day blurred into a rhythm of lift and haul, punctuated by bursts of laughter that felt foreign in my mouth. We blasted Henry's playlist, Springsteen bleeding into the National, with a detour into Hozier that made my pulse quicken, while taping boxes with duct tape that stuck more to our fingers than the cardboard. By dusk, the apartment echoed hollow, stripped bare except for the ghosts we'd chased out. Henry wiped his brow with the back of his arm, leaving a streak of grime like war paint. One more load, and you're free, Cal. New chapter, blank page. I nodded, but as we loaded the truck under the sodium glow of street lamps, a knot twisted in my gut. Freedom tasted like ash without direction, like a map without a destination. We drove in companionable silence to my new place, a sublet in Greenpoint, a shoebox with exposed brick and a view of the McCarran Park dog run. Unloading was quicker in the cool evening air, the neighborhood alive with the clink of wine glasses from rooftop parties and the distant wail of sirens that was New York's lullaby. When the last box thudded onto the warped floorboards, Henry cracked his neck and grinned. Mission accomplished, soldier. Beers on the roof to celebrate. The roof was a tar-papered expanse dotted with rusted lawn chairs and a communal grill that smelled of last summer's regret. We climbed up with a case of PBRs. The city sprawling below like a glittering beast, Manhattan's skyline a jagged promise across the dark ribbon of the river. We settled into Adirondack chairs that creaked under our weight, the skyline's pulse syncing with our breaths. Henry pulled a joint from his pocket, lighting it with a Zippo that bore his initials engraved in curly script. "Don't tell the landlord," he winked, passing it over. The smoke was smooth, earthy, unwinding the knots in my shoulders as stars pricked the velvet sky. Talk turned personal under the influence, his voice dropping an octave as he confessed the ex who'd ghosted him after a weekend in the Poconos, leaving him questioning if love was just a punchline in a bad rom-com. Thought she was the one, you know, the girl who'd make the suburbs feel like home again. But nah, she bailed for some tech bro in Silicon Valley. His laugh was bitter, edged with something raw. I shared fragments of Alex, the poetry slams where he'd clap too loud to drown out my nerves, the fights that escalated from whispers to slam doors. "He made me feel like I was too much," I said, the words spilling out unbidden. Like my heart was a fire he couldn't handle without getting burned. Henry leaned forward, elbows on knees, the joint's ember glowing like a tiny heartbeat. "That's on him, not you. You're not too much, Caleb. You're exactly enough." The way he said my name, full, deliberate, like he'd been practicing it, sent a shiver down my spine, unrelated to the chill wind off the water. Our eyes locked, the space between chairs shrinking to nothing, and in that suspended breath, I saw it, the mirror of my own longing reflected back, unmasked and unafraid. He reached out first, his hand finding mine in the dark, thumb tracing the ridge of my knuckles with a tenderness that belied his quarterback build. "Cal," he murmured, voice rough as gravel, "what if I told you I've been waiting for a sign like this?" My heart hammered, a wild thing caged too long. As I leaned in, our lips meeting in a kiss that tasted of smoke and salvation. Soft at first, then urgent, like we'd both been starving for air. The city faded to a hum, the world narrowing to the press of his mouth, the scrape of stubble, the way his free hand cupped my jaw like I was something sacred. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed together, breaths mingling in the night. "Henry," I whispered, fear and fire warring in my chest. "You're," I thought. He silenced me with a finger to my lips, his eyes fierce. "Labels are for cans, not us. I've known since that night at the bar watching you laugh, seeing the light in you that Alex dimmed. I came today not just to help. I came for this." The confession hung between us, fragile as the first frost, and as we kissed again, deeper, hands roaming with the caution of explorers, I felt the boxes of my past recede, making room for whatever this could be. But even in the glow of that rooftop revelation, a shadow lingered, the fear that history repeated, that love was just another box to unpack, heavy with hidden breaks. Dawn crept in like a hesitant lover, painting the Greenpoint skyline in bruised purples and golds, while Henry and I lay tangled in the sublet's thrift store sheets, his arms slung heavy across my waist, breath steady against my neck. The night had blurred into a haze of exploration, hands mapping unfamiliar territories, whispers turning to moans that echoed off the brick walls, bodies sinking in a rhythm that felt both ancient and brand new. I'd woken twice, heart racing from dreams of Alex's silhouette in the doorway, but Henry's murmur, "I'm here," Cal had pulled me back each time, anchoring me to the present. We rose late, the coffee maker gurgling like an old friend as we padded around the kitchen in boxers and bare feet. Henry, shirtless and tousled, flipped pancakes with a spatula he'd found in a drawer, humming Thunder Road off-key while batter sizzled on the hot plate. "Fuel for the victor," he declared, sliding a plate across the chipped formica, topped with blueberries smudged from a farmer's market haul. I watched him move easy, unself-conscious, the morning light catching the freckles across his shoulders like constellations, and marveled at how quickly he'd slotted into my chaos, turning survival into something resembling domesticity. Over syrup-sticky bites, we talked logistics, my first pitch meeting at a midtown ad agency that afternoon, his shift at the cafe starting at noon. "Nail it," he said, leaning across the table to kiss the corner of my mouth, tasting like maple and promise. "Show 'em the Caleb who sketches heartbreak into gold." His faith in me was a balm, soothing the raw edges Alex had left, but beneath it simmered a current of uncertainty. Henry had never dated a guy before. Not seriously, anyway. A fumbling college experiment with a lacrosse teammate. He'd admitted in the dark, but nothing that stuck. "This is new territory," he'd said, tracing patterns on my chest. "But feels right. Like coming home to a house I didn't know I owned." I left for the subway with his hoodie zipped over my button-down, the fabric carrying his scent like a talisman against the crush of rush-hour strap-hangers. The L train rattled toward Manhattan, graffiti-scarred windows framing glimpses of warehouses and warehouses giving way to glass towers that pierced the smog. At the agency, a sleek loft space with exposed ducts and mood boards pinned like butterfly collections, I pitched my concept. A campaign for a queer-owned craft beer, visuals of diverse couples toasting under neon signs, evoking resilience and revelry. The creative director, a sharp-dressed woman named Lena with a buzz cut and a Brooklyn accent thicker than mine, leaned back in her Eames chair. "It's got heart," she said finally, tapping a pen against her teeth. "Raw, real. We're in. Start mocks by Friday." Elation buzzed through me like the aftershock of last night's high, and I texted Henry a string of fire emojis as I emerged onto the sun-baked chaos of Times Square. Tourists milled like schools of neon fish, hawkers peddling knockoff statue of Liberty crowns, while digital billboards flashed ads for shows I'd never afford. I wandered into a Duane Reade for celebratory Red Bull, the fluorescent aisles a stark contrast to the rooftop intimacy of hours before. That's when my phone vibrated. Not Henry's reply, but a notification from Instagram. Alex had posted a story, him grinning poolside in Miami with the barista's arm around his waist. Caption: "New waves, same soul. Water wave moving on." The image hit like a sucker punch, jealousy coiling hot in my gut. I scrolled his feed compulsively on the walk to the cafe where Henry worked, each photo a fresh wound. Brunches with mutual friends who hadn't unfollowed him yet. Throwback shots of us that now mocked my solitude. By the time I pushed through the cafe door, the bell tinkling like a warning, I was a storm cloud, shoulders hunched against the espresso steam and indie folk crooning from the speakers. Henry spotted me immediately, waving from behind the counter where he frothed milk with practiced flicks. "Hero of the day," he called, but his grin faltered at my expression. He nodded to a coworker, a pierced barista with sleeve tattoos, and slipped out, pulling me into the narrow alley behind the shop, where dumpsters overflowed with yesterday's scones and the air smelled of yeast and regret. "Talk to me," he said, hands on my arms, thumbs rubbing soothing circles. I spilled it all, the pitch high, the Alex low, ending with a bitter laugh. Pathetic, right? Can't even celebrate without his ghost crashing the party. Not pathetic, Henry said firmly, pulling me into a hug that swallowed my frame. His heartbeat thrummed steady against my ear, a metronome to my chaos. It's human. But he's the past tense. Cal. We're the now. He tilted my chin up, kissing me slow and deep, the alley's brick rough against my back as his hands slid under my shirt, igniting sparks that drowned out the city's din. We broke apart flushed, foreheads touching, and for a moment, the world righted itself, love not as a battlefield, but a quiet rebellion. The weeks that followed unfolded like a mixtape on shuffle, euphoric highs laced with the low hum of doubt. Henry crashed at my place most nights, his screenplays scattered across the coffee table like autumn leaves, while I mocked up designs on my laptop, stealing glances at him hunched over his MacBook, brow furrowed in concentration. We cooked disasters, burnt risotto that we laughed over with boxed wine, and walked McCarran Park at twilight, dodging joggers and feeding crumbs to feral geese that honked like jealous exes. Sex was a revelation, tentative at first, then voracious, bodies learning each other's languages in the dim glow of string lights. He'd trace the faded scar on my hip from a childhood bike crash, murmuring praises that made me blush, while I'd nuzzle the hollow of his throat, inhaling the salt of his skin. But cracks spiderwebbed in the foundation. Henry's phone buzzed incessantly with texts from the guys, his old Philly crew planning a guys' weekend in Atlantic City. Poker and beers. Nothing fancy, he'd say, but the way he'd angle the screen away gnawed at me, stirring echoes of Alex's secrecy. One night, after a double shift that left him reeking of vanilla syrup, we argued over nothing, a misplaced charger that escalated into accusations. You're pulling away, I snapped, voice echoing in the tiny bathroom as steam fogged the mirror. Just like he did, Henry's face hardened, jaw ticking like a countdown. I'm not him, Caleb. But yeah, maybe I'm scared shitless. This us. It's everything I didn't plan for. My family's the whole picket fence vibe. Dad still asks when I'm settling down with a nice girl, what do I tell them? The vulnerability in his eyes gutted me, and I crossed the tile in 2 strides, wrapping him in a hug that turned desperate, apologies dissolving into kisses that bruised. We made up on the bath mat, water from the shower dripping like tears, promising transparency, trust, like vows etched in fog. Thanksgiving loomed, a holiday freighted with tradition and tension. I flew solo to my mom's in Queens, a row house crammed with ants and the scent of brine turkey, where questions about that boy hung unspoken. Henry drove down from Philly, emerging from his truck with a pie from his mom's kitchen and a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. The drive back to Brooklyn was quiet, his hand on my thigh a silent anchor, but as we crossed the Whitestone Bridge, he confessed, Dad cornered me. Said he heard rumors from a cousin about me and city influences. Hinted at conversion therapy bullshit if I didn't straighten up. Rage boiled in me, hot and helpless. Fuck him. You're not broken, Henry. But the words felt hollow against the weight of his silence. The way he gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white as the Manhattan skyline rose like a judgmental jury. That night, we didn't make love, we just held on, spoons in the dark, listening to the radiator hiss like suppressed sobs. The new year slunk in on a wave of resolutions and regret. My beer campaign launched to buzz. Lena high-fived me in the office, calling it the queer anthem Brooklyn needed. and Henry landed a fellowship at NYU's Tisch, his spec script optioned by an indie producer with Sundance cred. We celebrated at a Bushwick warehouse party. Bodies pressed in a sea of strobe lights and synth beats, his lips on mine tasting of champagne and possibility. But as midnight chimed, a text lit his phone. From an unknown number, a photo of us kissing on the rooftop, time-stamped from weeks ago, captioned "Care to explain." Son, the sender, Henry's sister, Emily, forwarding from their dad. The bubble burst in slow motion, Henry paling, me frozen as confetti rained down like ash. We fled to the street, the cold slapping sense into us, and in the shadow of a graffiti-tagged stoop, he shattered. I can't lose them, Cal. Not yet. His words were a knife, twisting deep, and as he walked me home in silence, I tasted the metallic tang of impending loss. Love, seemed, was a box I couldn't seal tight enough to keep the leaks at bay. Yet, in the quiet of my apartment, as he pulled me close one last time, desperate, devouring, I clung to the spark we'd ignited. Fight for us, I begged, tears salting our skin. He nodded, but dawn brought distance. A duffel bag packed, a kiss goodbye that lingered like a bruise. Give me time, he whispered, door clicking shut behind him. The echo reverberated, leaving me adrift in a space too big for one, wondering if moments could rewrite fates or if they were just pretty lies we told ourselves in the dark. February clawed in with a vengeance, blizzards dumping snow like unresolved grudges on the streets, turning Brooklyn into a muffled whiteout where even the rats sought higher ground. I buried myself in work, churning out mood boards and revisions until my eyes burned, the agency's fluorescent hum the only constant in a life suddenly unmoored. Texts from Henry came sporadic. Miss you. Family drama peaking. Hang tight, each one a breadcrumb leading nowhere, while I paced my apartment like a caged wolf, the compass tattoo I'd sketched for him, now inked on my forearm in hasty rebellion, itching like a fresh wound. Lena noticed, of course. You look like shit warmed over, she said one gray afternoon, tossing me a kind bar across the conference table. We were storyboarding a spot for a LGBTQ+ youth hotline, visuals of shadowed figures emerging into light, and her bluntness cracked my facade. Over takeout pho in her office, steamy bowls cutting the chill, she pried gently, boy trouble? Bill? Kid. I've got a divorce under my belt and a therapist on speed dial. I unloaded it all, the rooftop blaze, the family freeze-out ending with a shrug that felt like surrender. Thought he was different. But blood's thicker, right? She snorted, chopsticks pausing midair. Bullshit. Blood's just biology. Love's the choice. Give him space, but don't wait forever. You're not a supporting character in someone else's script. Her words stuck, post-it note in my brain, as I trudged home through slush puddles that mirrored my mood. That night, scrolling X, formerly Twitter, for distraction, I stumbled on a thread from a queer Philly account. Stories of coming out in conservative enclaves, triumphs laced with tragedy. One tweet gutted me. A guy disowned after a leaked photo, rebuilding in New York with nothing but grit and grinder ghosts. I screenshotted it, thumb hovering over send, but deleted the draft. Henry needed to choose us, not be guilt into it. Spring teased with false starts, crocuses pushing through concrete like defiant middle fingers, when Emily called. Henry's sister, a lithe lawyer with a voice like polished steel, found my number through his phone. Caleb? It's Em. Look, bro code or whatever, but Henry's spiraling. Dad's threats escalated. He's talking ultimatums, church retreats. Hen's holed up in his old room, staring at walls. He won't say it, but you're the anchor he needs. Her plea cracked something in me. Anger at the toxicity, grief for the boy caught in crossfire. Why tell me? I asked, voice thick. Because family's not just DNA, she said. And you make him shine, Kel. Like he's finally scripting his own story. I booked a bolt to Philly that weekend. The megabass too grim for my frayed nerves. The city unfolded in reverse. Brooklyn's grit yielding to Jersey sprawl. Then Pennsylvania's rolling hills dusted green. Henry's childhood home was a split-level colonial in Ardmore manicured lawn. American flag limp on the porch. The kind of place where barbecues masked simmering hypocrisies. He answered the door in sweats, eyes hollowed like he'd aged a decade. But the hug he pulled me into was bone-crushing, desperate. You came, he breathed, burying his face in my hair. God, Kel, I didn't deserve it. We escaped to his truck, driving aimless loops through suburbs where minivans idled at soccer fields and dads in polos grilled secrets over coals. He confessed in fragments. The family dinner where Dad had waved the photo like evidence in a trial. Mom's tears silent as communion wafers. Emily's defense drowned in Bible quotes. I tried talking, told him I'm bi, that it's me, not a phase. Dad said it's a demon, that I could pray it away, like love's a fucking flu. His voice broke on the last word, and I pulled over at a strip mall overlook. The Schuylkill River snaking below like a vein. We sat there as dusk bled orange across the water, hands clasped over the gearshift. I froze, Kel. Thought if I ghosted, it'd protect you from the mess, the hate. But it just carved me hollow. Tears tracked his cheeks, and I wiped them with my thumb, heart aching with the enormity of it. You're not a demon, Henry. You're a goddamn revelation. The kiss that followed was salvation, salty, searching, hands fisting shirts as if we could fuse souls through friction. We made love in the truck bed under a tarp, the spring air cool on fevered skin, stars wheeling overhead like indifferent witnesses. Back at the house, resolve hardened. Emily smuggled us beers in the basement rec room, paneled walls adorned with his high school trophies, a relic of the golden boy facade. We plotted like revolutionaries. He'd confront them at Easter, lay it bare, demand acceptance or distance. And if they choose wrong? I asked, tracing his palm lines. He met my gaze, steady as the river. Then I choose you. Every time, the words sealed something fragile, a pact against the tide. And as we whispered plans into the witching hour, hope flickered, tentative, but alive. Easter Sunday dawned muggy, azaleas blooming riotous in the yard as the family gathered. Aunts in pastel dresses, cousins chasing plastic eggs, the air thick with ham glaze and tension. Henry and I sat side by side at the oak table, his knee pressed to mine under the lace cloth, a secret Morse code. Dad, broad as a linebacker gone to seed, with a mustache like a broom bristle, cleared his throat post-grace, photo printed and passed like contraband. Henry James Whitaker, we've indulged your phases long enough. This abomination ends now. There's a pastor in Bryn Mawr. Stop! Henry's voice cut sharp, chair scraping as he stood, pulling me up with him. The room froze, forks hovering. It's not a phase, Dad. It's me. Caleb's me. My partner, my future. And if loving him makes me an abomination in your eyes, then maybe it's your eyes that need fixing. Mom gasped, hand to pearls, but Emily nodded fierce from across the table, a silent ally. Dad's face purpled, sputtering Leviticus verses, but Henry held firm, words tumbling like a dam breach, the isolation of hiding, the joy of truth. How Alex's betrayal taught me resilience, but Henry taught me redemption. The explosion came swift, yells ricocheting off crown molding, Mom fleeing to the kitchen in sobs, uncles muttering about family values. Dad jabbed a finger, out. Both of you. Don't darken this door till you've repented. Henry didn't flinch, grabbing my hand as we stormed to the truck, Emily trailing with a duffel of his clothes. Call me when you're settled, she said, hugging us tight. Proud of you, big bro. Love's the real resurrection. We peeled out, tires spitting gravel, the Colonial shrinking in the rear view like a bad dream dissolving. Silence stretched. Then Henry laughed, wild, cathartic, pounding the dash. Holy shit, we did it. Or, we survived it. Adrenaline crashed into euphoria. And at a roadside diner off I-95, neon sign flickering, eat. We toasted with shitty coffee, his foot hooked around my ankle under the booth. To new scripts, he said, clinking mugs. Where the heroes don't apologize for the plot twist. Back in Brooklyn by nightfall, the city welcomed us with open arms, street vendors hawking halal carts under sodium lamps, laughter spilling from bars like libations. We crashed into bed, bodies entwined in victory, but sleep evaded me. Henry's breaths evened, but mine raced with aftershocks. The what-ifs, the fallout. Had we burned a bridge too vital? Yet, as his arm tightened in sleep, pulling me closer, I chose belief in us, in the messy miracle of two broken boys building something unbreakable. The reckoning rippled outward. Henry's fellowship paused for personal leave, but Tish held his spot, professors emailing support laced with rainbow flags. Emily became our conduit, Mom's tentative texts. We pray for clarity. Dad's stony silence. I threw myself into the hotline campaign, channeling pain into pixels. A PSA of a young man stepping from shadows, voiceover intoning. Your truth isn't a burden. It's your superpower. It aired during Pride Month previews, going viral on TikTok. Strangers demanding gratitude that stitched my soul. But harmony fractured in June's swelter. Henry landed a temp gig at a production house in Chelsea, schmoozing execs over craft services, while I freelanced from coffee shops, dodging Alex's shadow. He'd liked my agency's Insta post, passive-aggressive olive branch I ignored. One humid evening, post a rooftop screening of Moonlight, irony not lost. Henry came home late, cologne fresh, tie loosened. Networking drinks, he explained, but the evasion in his eyes triggered alarms. With who? Pressed, casual as I could. That producer, Jax. Great guy, pushing my script hard. Jealousy flared, irrational but insistent. Jax was a name from Henry's stories. Charismatic, openly gay, with a Tribeca loft and a Rolodex of A-listers. Just drinks, I echoed, folding laundry with aggressive snaps. He sighed, raking hands through his hair. Cal, it's work. You're the one I come home to, but doubt seeded, watered by late nights and vague updates, blooming into paranoia. I scrolled his phone while he showered. Nothing overt, but a string of flirty emojis from Jax that twisted the knife. The blow landed mid-July, 4th of fireworks and false freedoms. I surprised him at the production office with takeout from our favorite dim sum spot, only to find the conference room empty save for empty wine bottles and Jax's jacket slung over a chair. Laughter echoed from the rooftop deck. Henry's, rich and unguarded, mingled with Jax's baritone. I climbed the stairs, heart thudding, and peered through the access door, them silhouetted against exploding skies, Jax's hand on Henry's lower back. Too intimate, too lingering. Henry's head tipped back in mirth, eyes sparkling in a way that echoed our first night. Betrayal bloomed cold in my chest, hotter than the summer pavement. I didn't confront, slipped away like smoke, dim sum cooling in my grip. Back home, I packed a go bag, the apartment's walls closing in like judgmental eyes. When Henry stumbled in at 2 a.m., reeking of bourbon and excuses, I was gone. Note on the fridge, some bridges burn for a reason. Don't follow. August baked the city into a fever dream. Air conditioners wheezing futile protests against the asphalt inferno. Subways stewing like human saunas where strangers' glares dared you to breathe. I crashed at Lena's couch in Cobble Hill, a pull-out that smelled of patchouli and past regrets, her tabby cat eyeing me like an intruder. Indefinite stay, she decreed, shoving a keyring into my palm. And therapy my treat. No arguments. Work became refuge. Endless revisions for a fall fashion line. Sketches of lithe figures striding confidently through urban canyons, projecting the poise I feigned. Henry's call started at dawn the next day, voicemails raw, pleading, "Cal, it wasn't what you think." Jax is pushy, but I shut it down. "Come home, please." I deleted them unlistened. The ache too fresh, too familiar. Alex's ghost had prepared me for this. The slow poison of suspicion. The crash of confirmation. Emily texted Bridges. "He's wrecked, Cal. Swear on my LSATs. Nothing happened. Give him a shot to explain. But trust, once fractured, leaked like a sieve, and I plugged it with distractions. Gym sessions that left muscles screaming. Bar crawls with agency newbies where shots blurred boundaries but not pain. Pride's afterglow soured into solstice blues. The hotline PSA I'd poured heart into won a Clio silver gleam presented at a gala in the Javits Center. Lena whooping as I stammered thanks. Strangers clapped, toasting the voice of a generation. But the win tasted hollow, champagne flat on my tongue. Henry showed, uninvited, tux rumpled, eyes red-rimmed, slipping through the crowd like a shadow. "Congrats," he murmured when he reached me, voice thick. "You deserve it. All of it." I stiffened, the room's chatter a roar in my ears. "Not here," I hissed, dragging him to a service corridor lined with humming vending machines. Words erupted like suppressed geysers. His defenses crumbling under my accusations. Jax a flirt who reads too much into signals. The hand on his back a misguided pat. "I love you, Caleb," he choked, palms up in surrender. "Only you. The rest is noise." Tears welled, mine mirroring his, and for a heartbeat, I wavered, leaning into the orbit I'd missed, the way his touch still ignited dormant fires. But the scar ran deep. "Love's not enough if doubt's the co-star," I said, stepping back. "Fix your script, Henry. Without me as the fall guy." He nodded, shattered, vanishing into the throng as fireworks, ironic, crackled overhead. September ushered reinvention. I sublet a studio in Bushwick, graffiti murals for wallpaper, a fire escape for midnight smokes, and dove into a solo exhibit at a pop-up gallery in Dumbo. Shades of Us. The show was titled Abstract Prints of Fractured Hearts Mended with Thread, inspired by our rooftop genesis but ending in shards. Opening night buzzed. Critics from the Village Voice scribbling notes, collectors fingering price tags, and Alex slunk in, fashionably late, champagne flute in hand. "Missed you at the after-party last month," he purred, all charm and no remorse. "Heard about the award. Knew you had it in you, revulsion ward with residual pull, but I held firm." Past tense. "Alex. Find a new muse," he laughed, low and predatory, but retreated when Lena materialized, arm-linked possessive through mine. "X alert," she stage whispered, steering me to a cluster of admirers. Among them, a curator named Theo, wiry and intense, with wire-rimmed glasses and a laugh like wind chimes. We talked shop till closing, his passion for queer archives mirroring my visual storytelling, and when he asked for coffee, I said yes, a tentative toe in uncharted waters. Henry's orbit tightened. Bouquets arrived at the gallery, wildflowers, no note, but I knew the sender. Then a package, the compass tattoo flash I'd drawn, framed with a scribbled apology. "My north is you. Always." Emily cornered me at a farmer's market, baskets overflowing with heirlooms. "He's clean therapy twice a week. Boundaries with Jax like Fort Knox. Wrote you letters he won't send. Says they're too raw." Her eyes pleaded, a sister's fierce love. "Second chances aren't cliches, Cal. They're courage." Doubt gnawed, but so did longing, the ache of empty beds, playlists skipped to avoid our songs. Theo was kind, cerebral dates at the Met discussing Basquiat's fury, but his kiss in the Egyptian wing felt clinical, a study in contrast to Henry's wildfire. I ghosted him gently, blaming creative block, and caved. Texted Henry a neutral coffee? Neutral ground. We met at a midtown Starbucks. Irony of corporate comfort. Him in a button-down that hugged his frame. Me armored in denial. Talk skirted edges, his therapy breakthroughs. Dad's grudging card. Proud. Son. Sort of. My exhibit sales funding a trip to Provincetown. Then, the core. I fucked up, he admitted, stirring sugar into black coffee till it swirled like a maelstrom. Let fear steer after the family blowout. Leaned on Jax for validation, not romance, but ego. Stupid. Selfish. But losing you? That's the real demon. His hand inched across the table, and I let it meet mine. The contact electric. Familiar. I'm scared too, I confessed. Of rebuilding just to raise again. He squeezed, eyes locking like puzzle pieces. Then we build slow. Bricks, not boxes. Re-entry was tentative. Movie nights with buffers. Lena crashing with popcorn. Walks in Prospect Park where geese still hunk judgment. Sex reignited gradual. Kisses lingering into touches. Bodies relearning trust in the soft hours. He moved back incrementally. A drawer for socks. A shelf for scripts. Until the apartment breathed us again. Fuller. Fortified. October's foliage turned the park into a kaleidoscope, and on a bench by the lake, ducks paddling lazy circles, we hashed futures. Road trip? He proposed. Grin boyish. Route 66. Your specs bones. No breakdowns. Promise. We launched in November, Post-election chill nipping heels. The Ford packed with coolers and cassettes. Pennsylvania blurred to Ohio's flatlands. Motels with neon vacancies are love nests, where neon buzzed like approval. In a Tulsa diner, Formica counters sticky with history, Henry read script revisions aloud, me sketching diner patrons with sidelong glances. Amarillo's Cadillac Ranch loomed surreal, buried cars, spray-painted confessions. And we added ours, Henry plus Cal, detour to forever. But climax brewed in the Mojave's maw, sandstorms whipping like furies, radio crackling warnings. The truck sputtered outside Barstow, radiator hissing defeat, stranding us in a ghost town of abandoned gas pumps. Panic flickered, echoes of my fears, but Henry laughed, popping the hood with mechanic's calm. See? Not buzzards. Just a hiccup. As he tinkered, grease-streaked and swearing, I realized this was us, breakdowns not endings, but pit stops for repair. Fixed by a passing trucker, beers traded for bolts. We pressed on, Vegas lights a garish beacon. The strip pulsed hedonistic, fountains dancing, slots chiming fortunes, but we sought solace in a off-strip chapel, eloping impromptu with a drag queen officiant named Divine. Vows exchanged over plastic roses. In detours and dust, I choose you. Rings from a pawn shop, silver bands etched with compasses, sealed it, simple as a Brooklyn stoop kiss. Back east by Thanksgiving, tanned, tattooed with matching road-worn ink, we faced Mom's table, Emily's grin conspiratorial. Dad wasn't there, but a letter arrived, working on my lines. Son. Invite extended. Progress, not perfection. As pie steamed and candles flickered, Henry's hand found mine under the cloth, a silent us against the script, yet humanity's hue-tempered joy. Winter whispered losses. Lena's diagnosis, breast cancer, Stage 2, rallied us to hospital vigils, her buzz cut a badge of war. Henry's script greenlit, but rewrites demanded solitude that tested seams. Alex resurfaced, clean a year, seeking amends over Zoom, forgiveness granted, not forgotten, a chapter closed gentle. Through it, our love deepened, human, flawed, arguments over dishes dissolving into dances, apologies in annotated margins of screenplays. In a city of 7 million stories, ours wove human threads, the boy who helped with boxes, the man who unpacked a heart. Moments, we learned, weren't thieves of fate, they were architects, building lives from the rubble of what was. December draped Brooklyn in tinsel and tension, holiday lights strung like fragile truces across brownstones, while the wind off the harbor carried the bite of unresolved winters. Henry's script wrapped principal photography in a chilly Astoria soundstage, him as associate producer, barking cues with a confidence that made my chest swell, and our honeymoon phase evolved into the grind of real rhythm. Shared leases negotiated over takeout, his alarm yanking me from dreams at 5 a.m. For early calls, I thrived in the agency glow, Lena's chemo curls sprouting defiant as she mentored from a corner office, her fuck cancer mug a talisman on conference calls. Christmas Eve found us at Emily's, Philly by train, the Keystone Corridor a silver ribbon under snow-laced skies. The house hummed transformed. Rainbow wreath on the door. Mom's pecan pie gluten-free for my city allergies. Dad arrived last, mustache trimmed, bearing a toolbox engraved for the fixer in you, a olive branch wrapped in hardware. Awkward toasts followed dinner, eggnog spiked light, words stumbling over family like ice on sidewalks. I'm learning, Dad grunted to Henry, handshake firm but eyes averted. Bible says love covers sins. Figure that's universal. It wasn't absolution, but a crack in the armor, enough for Henry to pull me aside in the garage, kissing me fierce against the workbench. See? Detours lead home. New Year's dawned crisp. Resolutions scrawled on a bodega notepad. His, write the truth. Not the expected. Mine, trust the sketch. Not the eraser. We ushered it in on my fire escape. Champagne flutes clinking as fireworks scarred the sky. His body warm against the chill rail. To us, he toasted, breath fogging our reflections in the window. The plot twist that stuck. Laughter bubbled. Easy now. Laced with the depth of scars earned together. Spring 2026 bloomed vengeful. Lena's remission party a rooftop rager. Her in a faux fur cape toasting survivors with Manhattans that packed rye punch. Henry's film premiered at Tribeca. Detour Hearts. Our road trip fictionalized into a queer odyssey of love's long haul, critics raving tender grit, audiences weeping in the dark. Post-screening Q&A. He dedicated it to the man who mapped my north, pulling me on stage for a kiss that drew cheers and catcalls, flashbulbs popping like celebratory gunfire. But humanity's underbelly surfaced in waves. Summer scorched with national headlines, anti-LGBTQ bills snaking through state houses, rallies in D.C., where we marched arm in arm, signs reading "Love isn't legislation." Henry's family strained. Dad's church splintered over his prodigal support. Mom mailing clippings of ally op-eds with post-its. Proud, but pray. We weathered it with rituals. Sunday sketches where I draw him brooding over revisions, him reading drafts aloud with theatrical flair, collapsing into giggles over clunky dialogue. Fall brought the gut punch. Alex's call, voice hollow over crackly connection from a rehab stint in Sedona. Cancer, he said flatly. Stage 4. Docs give months. Shock numbed me. Old wounds reopening not in rage, but pity. The boy who'd shattered me now fragile as rice paper. Henry urged grace. You're bigger than the hurt. We visited in October. A sterile room in Mount Sinai smelling of antiseptic and regret. Alex, gaunt and garrulous, apologized in fragments. Was scared of my own shadows. Took it out on you. And I forgave. Hand in his foretethered one. Henry's presence a steady hum at my back. Write your ending better, I whispered as we left. His weak smile a benediction. His passing in November was quiet. Funeral in a sun-dappled Jersey cemetery. Eulogies from friends I'd ghosted. Toasting the chaos he'd sown and the growth it fertilized. Back in Brooklyn, grief settled soft. Not suffocating. Henry's arms my harbor as we lit a Yarzite candle on the sill. Flames dancing like Alex's erratic spark. Extinguished, but illuminating still. Winter circled back. Our first anniversary marked with a return to the rooftop. Same chairs, creakier now. City skyline evolved with new cranes piercing the horizon. Snow flurried gentle, blanketing the tar in hush, as Henry pulled a box from his jacket. Not cardboard, but velvet, holding dog tags etched north and compass. Vows 2.0, he grinned, fastening mine around my neck. We made love under the dusting, slow and sacred, breaths sinking with the distant trains. Yet, the story's humanism lay in the unfinished. Lena's scars a roadmap of resilience. Emily's wedding where Henry walked her. Dad toasting awkwardly from the bar. My solo exhibit touring Provincetown. Sketches of us framed as love's long detour. Conflicts lingered. bills stacking like Jenga, creative droughts where doubt whispered quits, but we chose daily. Coffee runs with inside jokes, arguments aired like laundry on the line, drying honest in the sun. In the end, neither tragedy nor unalloyed triumph, but the quiet victory of two men who showed up, through boxes and betrayals, dust storms and dawns. Henry, scripting our sequel, me, illustrating the frames. Love, we learned, wasn't a moment that changed lives forever. It was the forever we built from its ashes, brick by tender brick, in a city that never slept but always dreamed. As spring greened again, we stood on that rooftop, hands laced, watching the East River glitter like possibility. Ready for Act Two? Henry murmured, lips brushing my temple. I nodded, heart full as the skyline. With you, always.